Today at the White House, President Biden met with Afghanistan's leaders just weeks before the U.S. completes withdrawing almost all of its forces. There was a lot on the agenda, finalizing plans on how many U.S. troops to keep in the country, how to continue training Afghan troops, and how to safely evacuate Afghans who work for the U.S. Nick Schifrin reports.
Today at the White House, President Biden vowed to keep fighting America's longest war, just without U.S. troops.
The partnership between Afghanistan and the United States is not ending. It's going to be sustained.
Flanked by Afghan President Ashraf Ghani and High Council for National Reconciliation Chairman Dr. Abdullah Abdullah, President Biden promised to confront Afghanistan's third COVID wave by donating 3 million doses of Johnson & Johnson vaccine and badly needed oxygen. And he pledged support for Afghanistan's government, but with what an administration official called tough love.
The Afghans are going to have to decide their future, what they want.
President Ghani compared today in Afghanistan to the U.S. Civil War.
The Afghan nation is an 1861 moment, like President Lincoln, rallying to the defense of the Republic, determined that the Republic is defended.
But that's not going well. This week, Afghan soldiers in multiple districts surrendered to the Taliban, and Taliban fighters have threatened 2 provincial capitals. The Taliban also captured the Tajikistan border crossing and districts that could allow them to cut off the sole roads to Kabul. On Wednesday, the Taliban released a statement declaring, quote, manifest victory and triumph. We interviewed Taliban political spokesman Sohail Shaheen earlier this week.
Do you believe you've achieved victory?
We are ending the war, and the Afghans become as one nation. So I think that is victory for the nation. But if you see at the angle that we in the United States achieved the solution through talks and negotiation, that is, I think, a success for both sides.
The Taliban say they still want a political settlement in talks in Doha, but the Afghan government accuses the Taliban of stalling to try and win on the battlefield.
There are Taliban forces that got to the edge of 2 provincial capitals, Kunduz City and Maimana. Do the Taliban plan on taking those provincial capitals?
Right now, we do not have any intention of running or those capitals and taking them. A military takeover is not our policy. Our policy is reaching a solution through talks and negotiation.
But Afghan government negotiators whom I speak to accuse you of abandoning the talks and not taking them seriously.
We say, come and please talk about the roadmap, political roadmap first, in order to reach a permanent solution. But they say, we want a ceasefire. They are rather interested in surrendering our side to them. But that is not a reconciliation.
Are you willing to entertain a humanitarian ceasefire, especially given the third wave of COVID?
It is up to the negotiation team of both sides.
Are you ready and willing to share power?
Any solution can reach by both sides. They will be acceptable to us. We want to enter a new phase of friendly relation with the USA in reconstruction of Afghanistan and their investment in the country. But if they still insist continuing the military approach, if they give them this moribund administration more money and ammunition, weapons, that means it will continue, will prolong the war.
Why, if foreign forces have agreed to leave, do you continue to attack and kill your fellow Afghans?
Those districts which have been fallen to our forces in the last few weeks, they fallen through negotiations, not through fightings.
But that's not true in all areas. Just in the last few weeks, the Taliban have killed dozens of U.S.-trained Afghan commandos. When the Taliban ruled Afghanistan, they destroyed historic Buddhist art and hunted and executed minorities and women who didn't adhere to their version of Islam.
If the Taliban were to come back into power, would you do that again?
That is something for future for the religious scholars.
And so that punishment could include public executions?
So that will be seen.
You said that you will allow girls to go to school. What reassurance can you give that you'll follow through on that promise when in the past you haven't?
All schools, that also includes girls' schools, and all universities and offices, they should remain open. So that is clear, they will have access to education.
The administration is currently negotiating with Turkey for Turkish troops to secure the airport, initially with the assistance of U.S. soldiers. U.S. service members will also remain to guard the embassy. And the U.S. is completing plans on how to keep training Afghan soldiers and whether U.S. contractors will continue to help the Afghan Air Force. The Taliban reject the presence of all U.S. forces and contractors.
If they remain or leave behind some forces, some residual forces, that means continuation of the occupation.
Meanwhile, thousands of Afghans who have helped translate for and facilitate the U.S. war are applying for U.S. visas. Senior administration and congressional officials tell PBS NewsHour they're planning on evacuating some 17,000 and perhaps more to U.S. territory. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin.